You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Reddy, but my friends call me Spanner. So let's be friends. We are jumping on for a news show. There's so much for a little awkward break period in between Interlagos and Las Vegas. There's been loads of news and rule changes coming up. So we're going to discuss stuff like this new midfield rule where people are going to get punished if they finish fifth by not being able to make their own or not being able to buy certain parts from customers, from their masters, if you like. And we'll talk about the rotational races in Europe that have been proposed, which is tearing chunks out of my F1 fan heart. There's also going to be a launch show at the beginning of 2025. We'll have a look at the Fallows situation and the fact that both of the governing bodies of F1, the FIA and Liberty Media, seem to be bleeding personnel at quite an alarming rate. But we are joined by, well, firstly, you guys, because we are an independent podcast produced in the podcasting shed. With the kind permission of our patrons and partners, we aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. And I'm joined by real-life sports reporter from Australia. It's Jonathan Simon. Hello, Jonno.
Hello, Spanners. Always good to be here on a Sunday at an adequate hour with our one Australian listener because I made everybody fall asleep because this is the worst time to do a podcast. But you can watch it archived. You can listen to it archived, which is the best part.
Yeah, we're doing this in the morning time. John has bullied me into doing it in the morning. Why can't we do it at Aussie time? Because you're on the wrong side of the planet, Jonno. That's why.
It's 9:30 p.m. It's the only time of the night that I function. Like I said, I only function 1 hour before I sleep, and then that's it. That's my most productive hour. Then I have to sleep, unfortunately. So here we go. Let's unravel the news of the week.
Big dirty news. All right, Jonno. What's this midfield punishment rule? We're now going to have teams not wanting to finish in the top five. Why?
Yeah, it's a weird one. So it's a report coming out from various sources. I think Automoto and Unsport was the main source for this. But it's basically saying that any team that finishes in the top five in the Constructors' Championship is then required to build all its own components. That's basically the gist of the rule. It's going to proposal. Already, Ayuka Komatsu from Haas has said, we are opposed to this, as he should be, because Haas would be one of the teams that struggles 100%. But I think it's a bit of a silly rule, and it's definitely not the correct direction to go into Formula One. We'll talk about why in a little bit. But that's the basic gist of the rule. Now, what that means is if Haas have a strong season, if Williams have a very strong season, they then finish fifth. They then have 3 years now to then come up with a plan to design all their own parts. So they have to build all their own components. They can't, for example, get a gearbox that's made by Ferrari and then chuck it into the Williams or in the Haas, for example, which is what Haas do at the moment with some of their parts on that car.
So, and what problem is this solving? I don't understand.
Well, no, 100%, because to me, the cost cap is already, this is the tightest the sport's ever been, from top to bottom, any team ever involved in history. No doubt, no question about that. I think this rule, it's trying to encourage, this is what I'm interpreting from this, and I could be wrong, and if you're listening and you think that there's another idea why they're doing this, feel free to comment, but I think that they're trying to make teams a little bit more independent. And for example, they don't want a Haas to be a customer Ferrari. They don't want it to be a pseudo Ferrari. They want a Haas to be a Haas. For example, when you're a Ferrari supporter, you support Ferrari because they make their own parts. It's a Ferrari. It increases their branding. You don't want to support, for example, a Haas because you go, is this Haas or is it Ferrari? I'm confused. You know what I mean? Like they want them to. I honestly feel like this is a distraction to other news that we'll get into a little bit later on that the FIA has gotten involved in. Anyway,
I think it comes down to the heart of what they want the Formula One teams to be. So is this a backdoor way to say, well, actually by stealth we can make all the teams more independent? Because at some point all of the teams are going to finish in the top 5. You know, and if they do finish in the top 5, they're going to be penalised 3 years later and struggle to develop, which is going to allow other teams to get into the top 5 as well. I think it's going to be a disaster for Haas, for Stake or Sauber or whatever, or even Williams. It's going to be a disaster for them to finish in the top 5 at this point while this exists. They are completely set up. These aren't teams that are spending up to the cost cap. So they're set up to manage F1 within their budget, which means going and buying a few things off the shelf. Now, I've always been a fan of customer teams. So I would not have this restriction on cars. I would say, if you want to be Jonno Racing, you know, or Missed Apex Racing, we can turn up and we can buy most of the parts, or we can buy even last year's car and just go racing, get into the garage, learn how to do things. And then ultimately, if you say, well, you can't have the current whatever, you can't have the current parts, you can have last year's parts, then you're never going to be fully competitive by doing that. But you're in, your races are racing, and then you start building up, oh, okay, well, now we can afford a wind tunnel. Now we can afford a little gearbox shop that gets us up to spec. But that's the game you can play, and that's a ladder you can climb. And so, but this is just enforcing it. So a team that's not ready to be regularly producing all its own parts, suddenly, as a punishment for finishing 5th and having a blinding season, they are then nerfed. So they're not going to they'll make a little bit more prize money, but they're not going to then instantly have the ecosystem where they can start having these new production lines, and they're not going to magically have more money season on season to go all the way up to the cost cap.
100%. And I understand the intentions of this rule. I don't think this is the correct way to execute it or go about it. I don't even think having this rule in the first place is even necessary, because what if you're now, for example, 5th and you're Williams and you go, oh, damn, we're just not going to qualify every race. We're going to finish last. We're going to make 700 pit stops per race because we don't want to finish and score any points. We need Sauber to beat us for 5th because we cannot afford to. I'm going to assume that this also means like internal combustion units, engines, all that kind of stuff, power units. I'm going to assume that this also means those components. I could be wrong, because if it does, and you then need to open your own engine division, much like Red Bull powertrains, that costs hundreds of millions. It's the complete opposite effect to what the cost cap's trying to achieve.
So I don't think this particular one will include the engines, because there's a specific,
it doesn't. Okay.
There's a specific thing they said. I think it's like the listed parts inventory or something. I don't think that does include that. But is that the way they want it to go? Because in spirit, that is the same thing. So you're basically saying you can't be a customer team for those parts. You can still be a customer team for engines, but you can't be a customer team for those individual parts.
And Ayo Komatsu raised a very good point to this. Who, as F1 fans, care? Like, I'm not sitting here going, oh, I'm really annoyed that Williams uses a Mercedes power unit. Like, that is, I cannot sleep tonight because I want them to use a Williams powertrain. Nobody cares who's watching F1. They just want to see racing on track, that kind of stuff. Maybe the niche technical side, that they want to see that. But I just don't think this is a correct rule or a good rule or anything like that. But you want to say something?
Oh, just sorry. Yeah, Adrian's just clarifying there for us. So basically, there are listed parts which all teams have to make for themselves, and then there are non-listed parts. So the non-listed parts will be the ones that they'll have to make for themselves. I don't believe that covers engines. I think that's a separate.
No, it doesn't. No. Of course, he's correct. So that doesn't cover, because I was going to say I missed that part in the article, but I'm pretty sure this should not contain anything about power units, because that's just terrible. Where this could work is with a luxury tax. Now, I wrote about this many years ago, and I've said this before on the podcast, but I think the cost cap is a good idea for the sport. I think it's working. I think I'm not saying the cost cap is wrong, but where I think the sport should have headed in a direction is also implement a luxury tax, soft caps and hard caps. Basically what that means is you've got your 100, let's say 200 million a year soft cap. Now, anything above that you spend, you then get taxed. Every dollar you get taxed 45 cents on top of that. Up to, let's say, 400 million. You cannot spend above 400 million whatsoever, no matter if you're feeding your team chicken wings, McDonald's, whatever Red Bull said they were doing two years ago, that kind of stuff. Then you collect all this tax money. You then pay it to the bottom teams and spread it amongst the teams that were under the soft cap. So now you're sitting here as a Kick Sauber, VB, Carb, Steak, whatever these teams are called, and you can sit there and go, wow, not only did I get my Constructors TV prize money, but I also got an extra $30 million from this luxury tax because Ferrari wanted to spend this much because they wanted to win. And that's where Ferrari, I know every year are going to spend 400 million if that's what you set the hard cap. And then on top of that, they're going to have to pay, what is it, like whatever the math is, 45 million tax.
So the way the cost cap has worked, which is different to yours, is by bringing down what the top teams could spend.
Yeah.
So, I would imagine that the top teams were having a bit of a word with F1 and saying, hey, we've got 1,000 employees here at Mercedes, and the Red Bull money chest, I mean, it is essentially infinite, but they don't want to keep spending infinite amounts of money. So I wonder whether that cost cap was actually from the top team saying, okay, this can't go on, we can't keep doing it. So your method really would rely on them still wanting to pour infinite money in, and then so I don't know, I think we don't live in that world anymore, and especially when you come to the franchise element of Formula One, where everybody's protected, everybody is making money. That's why I think they've gone to this more cost cap method of suppressing the top spending. What I don't understand is when there's already a big gulf between the top 4 teams and the bottom 6 teams. Why are they penalising teams for being aspirational and popping up the grid? So
exactly,
there's 2 things here. One, your idea of people tanking races to avoid being 5th, that is real. So, now that Jonathan Noble has been tweeting and writing about teams potentially tanking to get wind tunnel time, I assume it's not a conspiracy anymore. It's not a crazy tin hat conspiracy from old spanners in his shed. Now that the big boys are saying it too, tanking absolutely exists. And you could see people going, there is no way. There is no way we can invest. We at all costs, we can't score points. Now, if your 5th and 6th place teams are both in that situation, even getting to 5th at all is a disaster, because the 6th place team can just tank behind you. So they go, well, we can score these points because that'll still keep us in 6th. But if we were to overtake a car now, do not overtake that car, whatever you do, otherwise we're going to be in 5th. And that's going to start in the middle of the season. That's an insane thing. And you go, well, really, we're stopping cars just simply scoring points. But the other thing is, in a regulation set, teams, because of spending restrictions, will pick a year. So, like James Vowles now, an easy example is he's picking 2026 because of a regulation change. But a lot of teams throughout a regulation set will say, right, let's really focus early on next season. So it's peaky. So you're going to get teams having a good season in the midfield, not in sync with each other. So I don't know. It feels like a non-starter for me, and I don't know what is the motivation behind it. Let customer teams be customer teams. I'd say go more towards the customer teams. Let a team turn up and drive last year's car.
No, I like the mix of both. I like having, I don't care if a team comes in and they're called, I don't know, Virgin F1. That's a terrible example anyway. But if they come in and it's like, well, I want to support this team now. This is cool. You know what I mean? Or if, one of the Formula 2 independent teams now entry into Formula 1, that can happen. But anyway, the everything you said was 100% spot on. And what I wanted to add just quickly is, why is Formula 1 now trying to bring the top teams down to the bottom teams? I know that's not their intentions, but it's kind of what's happening. It's they say they're making an even playing field, but you're bringing the top teams down. Let the top teams spend hundreds of millions of dollars and like I said, tax them, and then give that tax to the bottom teams and then bring them up. So rather than have everybody slow down their growth, make everyone grow together faster. That's my philosophy on all this. Forget this 5th place rule.
I didn't realize you were such a socialist, Jonno. Eat the rich.
No. Is that how that's come across? Oh, no.
Right. Speaking of exceptionalism and sharing, Stefano Domenicali wants to basically take away European races. So there's this idea that they're going to start having rotational F1 races in Europe. And I think the quote was something like, it's going to happen, get used to it. Sucks to be you, Europe. Ha 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 ha. America has all your bases now. And you go, that is so sad. I get that it's going to be an international sport, but there's such a core of European tracks. And so let me be a bit kind of European-y and at the moment. But look at the great F1 tracks. I think it's undeniable that they've had their core bases in Europe, in Japan, parts of Asia, and in Australia. So as it becomes a more international sport, you're going to want to get out and do the street circuits. And I'm assuming the street circuits make them more money. But then if you go to a place where there's not really an F1 fan base, but you do a big, exciting race car event, then you can fill a street circuit with people who just want to see the big thing in the city. And then we're losing tracks like, look what happened in Germany. You had two great traditional tracks, and that just fizzled away. They tried to do the swapping. I know the German fan base kind of came in and out with Schumacher and Vettel and stuff, and never rallied behind Hulkenberg, a disgrace. But you try to rotate those tracks, and it's just not. It's not special. It's like, oh, which one is it this year? Is it Hockenheim? Is it Nürburgring? If you start doing that with Monza and Spa, I would just be heartbroken.
Yeah. No, I agree, because I actually didn't mind the rotation between Germany because, number one, I hated both tracks. No offense to the Nürburgring, but like everyone who goes, oh, this is the best track in the world. I'm like, wait, so I have 175 corners to learn, and then the Grand Prix track's like skinny. And you
the Nordschleife.
The Nordschleife as well. Come on. I just think the Nürburgring is...
Stop.
So overrated.
Right. Sorry.
Anyway,
no. I need to fend this off now. You've started this argument. The Grand Prix track at the Nürburgring
is different. Yes.
It's a great track. And if you run F3 cars on that, it's a great track. So let's not always blame, F1 tracks for F1 cars. So F1 cars outgrew that. But I think you could still go and have a decent event at that circuit. I mean, it's no worse than Imola.
Well, no, Imola's a great track. I kind of like Imola. I'm going to cop a lot of flack because I just
track,
broke
but not for F1.
I broke a motorsport sin, and the motorsport sin is 99.9% of people like the Nordschleife and the Nürburgring, and you cannot say a bad word about it. So, I'm going to cop a lot of flack off Twitter off this.
Yeah, Jonno at internet.com.
With the German rotation, I didn't mind that, between Hockenheim and Nürburgring. Now we don't even have a German Grand Prix. There were reasons for that too, financial reasons and other stuff. So that was different to what we're thinking of now. What I wouldn't want to see is what you said, like a Spa and a Monza swapping between years. There needs to be staple historic races, like a Silverstone, a Spa. What else have we got that can be in there? Monaco, which is your favorite circuit. I know Spanners. That kind of stuff stay in every single year, but then rotate, like, no offense, but the Qatar track, like, who cares? Like, who cares? How about that comes in once every 3 years?
Well, okay, yeah. So then we're getting to, what? Yeah, if we do it from a fan point of view, you would say, yeah, Qatar's pretty anonymous. The new Saudi track's pretty anonymous, to be honest.
Yeah. I gained 100 followers back from criticizing the Qatar track. So I'm back on track, yeah.
So, we've got that coming up, haven't we, as well? So it's Vegas, Qatar, then Abu Dhabi. Yeah. So they are paying, I assume Saudi Arabia and Qatar pay to have those Grand Prix there. And then you look at the American circuits and you go, well, they're going to fill every track out there. That makes sense. The fan base out there, I think, is bigger than people realize. So I think people think, oh, America's just kind of into it for now. No, it's a huge and sustained fan base out there, and they're going to fill the Grand Prix when they go. So Montreal's, I'm saying America's, you know what I mean. Montreal, if you include Mexico, COTA, what else have we got? Well, Vegas and Miami, all sold out, aren't they? They're packed. Miami was packed when I was there. So you can't resist having those tracks there. So something's got to give at some point. But the fact that it might be, when they say European circuits, what are you gonna have a Hungaroring not on the calendar every year? That would be heartbreaking. You can't lose Monza, you can't lose Spa, you can't lose Silverstone.
The Hungaroring, really?
Yeah,
that would be heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's a great track.
I wish we could, though. This is what you can't do, unfortunately, is I wish you could know when it's going to rain there and be like, that's the year we want to host at the Hungaroring. Oh, it's going to be dry next year in July.
It generates better racing than people. It's got this reputation of Monaco without the walls, which is, I mean, the thing that makes Monaco rubbish is the walls, really. But Hungaroring, if there's always overtakes into T1, T2. You can definitely pass at Hungaroring.
I also think I also think if you draw a big crowd, like Zandvoort, that's a lock. If you draw, and Australia, you cannot be a rotational race if you're drawing like 400,000, whatever people per weekend. But also, I think this kind of tells us something else, and it's a good thing. We're at 24 races next year. Does this mean Formula One is not planning to expand beyond 24? Thank goodness, because the amount of weekends this year where, like, I'll talk to my girlfriend and I'll be like, oh, hey, let's do this on the weekend. I'll be like, oh, I've got to watch F1. Oh, and then it creates a little bit of drama, and then I can't see friends, and there's just too many races. So let's end this chatter by saying 2-day race weekends every race weekend, and let's cap it at 24 race weekends.
Firstly, don't worry about it. What are you, like, late 20s now? As soon as you get into like kids and stuff, friends isn't an issue anymore. So that's all right. But we've got Rachel in the live chat. Hello, Rachel. Saying apparently Vegas is still trying to offload tickets. So
that's because they're about $15 million each.
We seem to be getting this with the US races though, because it looked like that in Miami. If you were looking at thinking, there's so many tickets available and they're trying to offload it, but then you get into the stadium and it's absolutely heaving. So I don't know. We looked at Vegas last year and it did look like there were some empty grandstands leading up to it, but not on the Sunday. It looked full. So I'd imagine that's F1 themselves as well. So there's no promoter for F1 to pay in Vegas either. So they're still making their money there. They must not be making money at some of the European tracks then. Is that what they're doing? I mean, by the way, if you're going to say we can rotate out Hungaroring, what's that little track called in Australia that you guys go to? And you're going to sit there and think that you can get away with it and that you're immune? Let's rotate Australia then. Because
no, but I had the crowd rule. Like I said, if you fill 95% capacity and you don't sell tickets to people, in graveyards and stuff and fake it and do shifty stuff like that, then it counts. You should be a lock on the calendar.
I think you should have to rotate with, I don't know, with Baku.
China.
Yeah.
Baku.
And you never, because let's be fair to the Australian Grand Prix. It's always been, it's the season opener next season as well, I think.
Yes.
Which is good. I like it. That feels like a good little tradition, that. However, it is a track where it's difficult to overtake. I don't think the little changes they made have really done anything to change that. Therefore, rotate with Baku.
I would 100% agree. Actually, can I 200% agree on that first off? Just because it's a great race to go to. One thing I didn't realize as well, just to finish up on this topic, is that when I used to buy Australian Grand Prix tickets, like when I was a kid, I didn't realize like the privilege I had of it not being sold out after like 10 minutes. And now recently it is seriously the hardest experience in the world. So then having rotational races, if your event is now once every 2 years, imagine how hard it's going to be to get tickets to the Australian Grand Prix, which takes place every 2 years, for example.
Yeah. I think this is a situation where I'm going to be disappointed. So I think he's right. There are going to be rotations, but I mean, which ones? If you're Dutch, you're going to say, of course not Zandvoort because of Verstappen. If you're British and you've got British exceptionalism, you're going to go, but obviously not Silverstone. I mean, we'll fight the case for the other little tracks, but you obviously don't mean Silverstone. But if they do, I mean, yeah, you'll just never be able to get a ticket for Silverstone. Basically, it's hard enough as it is. So let's hope that that's one of those things that kind of drifts, because I am not going to sit here and get too upset about something that Stefano Domenicali says when he is allegedly on the chopping block himself. So what do you make of this news, Jonno? That I think at the end of 2025, I think it's a rumor, is that he's going to be going to MotoGP to be the CEO
as
of
the
Moto.
CEO.
Yeah, to be that. Which feels like, no offense, MotoGP, that feels like a demotion, doesn't it?
Here we
Sorry.
go. No.
It's a smaller series. It's a less popular series. Or is he going in there as a fix-it man? So you could say that he's so good that they want him to be the fix-it man to drive it forward. And we can talk about whether he's done a good job as F1 CEO. But there's all sorts of other rumors and conspiracies. So I've been told that the Dutch source of this rumor is fairly
hit or miss.
Hit or miss. So cannot be seen as a fully reliable source. But there's all sorts of stuff that this is involving Andretti and the new American government and all sorts.
He strikes out in a lot of his pitches, but he does smack some home runs, which is the American analogy, because now there's like 400 American races and we need to make more US analogies. Anyway,
I translate to American all the time.
With this one as well, I have been trawling MotoGP Twitter, which was an interesting experience because I haven't spoken, this is more of a question probably for Kyle and like the MotoGP Missed Apex crew, which is a great podcast if you haven't checked that out yet.
Check it out.
Now, they are all completely denying this already. These are inside sources within the MotoGP paddock. I even texted one. He said he hasn't heard anything about this. It's not true, but we have to wait for another source to report it. Once we get a second authentic source that then comes out with an article on this, it can be true. Now, the problem with this is for Domenicali, is he being forced out? Did he want to leave voluntarily? It seems to me if you're going from CEO of F1 to CEO of MotoGP, you've been poached. I wouldn't say he's been forced out. That's what I think.
Or he could be like one of those headmasters that gets sent to all the rubbish schools to try and make them better.
Make them better.
I just compared MotoGP to a failing school. I'm sorry about that. I'm curious. The guys have been saying, I should check out a race and then go on the MotoGP pod. I think they're doing well enough on their
they don't need you
at the moment. But one thing on the news cycle and the news source, which is you say this guy's hit and miss. Now, a lot of people get their reputation as this insider oracle by quoting Italian press who
were also hit and miss.
Who just print anything. Like they're like, that'll do. Yeah, I heard that thing from Dave. We heard it from Derek. Yeah, we'll print it. Let's go. And in the olden days, if you wanted to get that kind of reputation, I mean, I used to run with a website that's all they did. All their articles and rumors and inside whispers were just stuff they've read on the Italian press. And if it hits and it happens, then you go, yep, see, as predicted by me. And there's a few Twitter accounts now that still, and big ones as well, fully dine out on doing this thing of hunting around and crawling around, the non-English speaking press and then, saying it's an inside whisper. Funnily enough, I did find it in one other place, being reported in one other place independently of this. And guess what country? Sorry,
Italy, was it?
It was from Italian press. So I'm wondering whether this Dutch journalist just uses that same tactic of throwing these out. So there's already movement. So we've already got Maffei. Is it Maffei? Greg Maffei.
Greg Maffei.
Yeah, so he's already leaving. That one looks more organic, like he's going off to run a country pub or something like that. But there's a lot of whispers, inside whispers. So I just pretend it's a rumor that I heard. I'm hearing an inside whisper that it's to do with Andretti. And it's the two people who have opposed Andretti who are now out of the door because Andretti is apparently mates with Trump or something. There you go.
Oh, wow.
So that's what my inside whispers are telling me. So
I'm a socialist, Spanner, so I'm not even going to get into that.
So this is the problem when there's any kind of government intervention and any kind of edicts from above, and people always are talking about F1's in trouble because the EU doesn't like what it's doing in Belarus, or there's the antitrust lawsuit against Liberty Media because they're being anti-competitive, not letting Andretti in. I always say, well, you can't get overexcited about these things because people in the EU rotate all the time. And then the next person comes in and goes, right, what do you want to do about this F1 thing? And go, what? F1? No. My big thing is duck preservation in waterways. And then, you get to something like the antitrust. Well, Donald Trump, I am assured, doesn't like antitrust stuff. As in, he just wants businesses to go away and go do what they want. Oh, you're being anti-competitive? Well, that's fine. You're paying money and you're paying your taxes. So you go, well, suddenly that case looks less secure. But then if they've got personal connections in and they can start firing individuals and influencing it that way, then who knows? But I'm sensing very much that Jonathan Simon here, you're very much like broadcast TV in that you don't want too much controversy. And you don't want too much drama, so you are going to keep to a neutral opinion on this, just like many mainstream TV presenters. Because if they don't, if they put their head above the parapet and start wildly tweeting about Verstappen, then they might lose their jobs, just like Damon Hill appears to have done, Jonno.
Yeah, Damon Hill, who I would say days after, is it fair to say? Mere minutes after his comments on Max Verstappen, seconds after Max Verstappen's comments, he was, I don't know if he was let go from Sky F1. The wording on this was pretty weird because it was kind of like, we thanked Damon for the last 13 years. Now, what does that mean? Do you thank him as in you fired him, or is he leaving? There's no clarification. I haven't heard any of those things, but it's come right after he was the most honest, one of the most honest presenters about Abu Dhabi 2021 and about Max's driving standards after Mexico and all that stuff. Like, I don't know if this has any correlation. I did watch him, though, at the last race in Brazil, and I did kind of think to myself, with no offense, Damon, I was like, he did seem a little not TV, like, on the decline. Like, he just was not good at all, and he was a bit hard to watch at times. So maybe that was just me personally. So that could also have something to do with it. Maybe Sky F1 spanners are also going away from just hiring drivers for the sake of hiring drivers and hiring people who can perform to a certain skill set, like the Missed Apex panel.
I have a different take on it. So I think from what he's tweeted subsequently, it does sound like he was let go. So he tweeted this clip from Monty Python's The Life of Brian, where there's like a guy taking a 18-year vow of silence, and Brian treads on his foot, and he's going, and then Brian's trying to make him keep quiet. He's like, no, there's no point now. I've had to hold my tongue for 18 years. Now I'm just going to say everything I want. And that's what Damon Hill tweeted, as if he's effectively been silenced for 13 years, and now he's going to tell all. And then he suggested that perhaps he would write a book on it. So I think that that's acrimonious. And if you don't know who these people are, by the way, sorry, this is from the Sky TV broadcast. Damon Hill should have been the 1994 champion, but ended up winning the championship in 96. Of course, he should have been the 94 champion.
I don't know. You could say that, Fernando Alonso should have been the 2012 champion. Lewis Hamilton should have been the 2021 champion, which he should have.
Schumacher had it off, drove fully to one side of the track, and then drove fully back across to collect Damon Hill.
I'm with you on that. I do think in the fitting culture of Adelaide, which, by the way, Supercars Adelaide today, no spoilers, was a thrilling race.
Ooh, okay.
Just to go back to that same circuit. But I look, the thing with him is he was honest. He told it like it was. That was the best part about it. Yes, he was accused of being biased towards British drivers, all that kind of stuff. Yes, I get it. I think it's also the right time for Sky to change. And the way sometimes these TV crews make these decisions is I've genuinely sat down in some of these TV meetings and they will legit say stuff like, hey, we are looking to go away from just athletes. Hey, we are looking to go in this direction. So it has to be a directional change at Sky where they want to particularly say, look, we don't want to have all these different drivers, for example. We don't want to have, for example, they tried to get rid of Ted Kravitz a few years ago, which was very ridiculous. There's a reason for this, and it will emerge in the way Sky then go about their talent over the next few years. TV talent, that is.
Yeah, that's interesting. I still feel like this is about the individuals. So Sky do have a habit of, by the way, excellent broadcast. I think like the way it's put together is brilliant. I've tried to go to, say, other commentary streams where I like the individual more. For example, so I really like Jolyon Palmer. Alex Jacks is a great commentator, but they don't have the resources of information and insight that Sky have. As a complete broadcast, it's incredible. It's incredible how they get the information. They're always talking to people. They have all the data. The Sky Pad is a great feature. So I've forgotten what I was saying now, just to praise Sky. I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't me just slandering Sky. But they're very mainstream media. So if, for example, when I was on BBC Radio, you would not hear me just giving my out-and-out political opinions, because it can be a little bit polarizing. It can be a little bit triggering to people or whatever. And then you go, not that I've got extreme views, but what you want is that everyone who tunes in feels comfortable and that they can share that space. That doesn't mean you never talk about issues, but you don't set yourself up as one side of a polar debate. Whereas here on Missed Apex, this is my platform, so I'll just give you my honest opinion. If it happens to be on one side of the debate or the other, so be it. If you like that, you stay tuned. And if you don't like it, you go and find one that suits you better. That's this kind of medium. But Sky need to and want to be all-encompassing. So they tend to have gotten rid of the characters that show this kind of presence to stand on one polar side of an argument or the other. Now, in 2021, he had Johnny Herbert alongside him. So Johnny Herbert made him look less on that side and a little bit more tempered and withdrawn. But once Johnny Herbert was away, we then went into a boring couple of seasons where there wasn't that same controversy with Verstappen. But then as soon as he started just driving people off in a championship fight, Damon Hill stood up and started talking about it without Johnny Herbert there to make him look less extreme. And I think suddenly then he becomes a spike to try and dampen down. So I do think that's why Herbert went. And I do think that's why Damon Hill has gone. But it's the other way around as well. Before we make this the Verstappens march down to get them fired, it's happened the other way as well. So I think if you look at Paul di Resta, he was so strangely anti-Hamilton.
He
was so anti-Hamilton. It was crazy. And there was one particular practice 3, and it was in the run down to the championship fight in 2021, and Hamilton put in a blistering soft tyre run. And with a slip of the tongue and saying the quiet bit out loud, he went, "Oh no, I hope that's not true. I hope that's not representative." And then he realised that he'd said the quiet part out loud, and he went, "For the good of the sport, for the good of the sport and the competition, I hope that's not true." Now, this was with Lewis Hamilton behind in the championship, by the way, and also Paul di Resta also got let go. So I think that Sky just don't like people being that polarising, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, from my experience, anytime I've done TV commentary, whatever, I genuinely, this is a me thing. I can't attest to every single other presenter or commentator or expert out there. I genuinely don't care. I know it sounds funny, but I do not care. I am there to do my job, do the best job possible. I don't care who wins. Lewis Hamilton's not putting money into my house deposit, and he's not giving me, 50 billion Bitcoin for free. He's not doing any of that stuff. So I am there to have a good time and watch the sport I love, if it was F1, for example. But yes, maybe secretly, for example, yes, I am a Hamilton fan, but when it comes on to putting, for example, my Mr. Apex podcast cap on, I try to be rational for the millions of Verstappen fans that listen to this podcast and adore you, Spanners, and everybody else. I think there's that as well. That's why I try not to look into TV bias too much. If somebody comes across a certain way, I try not to say, hey, they support this guy over that guy. Why aren't people talking about all the times that Ted Kravitz has irritatingly praised Max Verstappen constantly?
Oh, yeah, loads. Yeah.
Because Verstappen's the best, he's the greatest driver on the grid at the moment. So why now is there no articles on that? There's only articles when he calls out Max. I just don't get it. It's people just want stuff to fill their narratives.
I will say the Verstappen fan base is so good at just being in every comment section with force, in numbers, in herds. If I have a tweet and it go, oh, by the way, Blue Sky. Search for Spanners Ready Blue Sky. I'm
going to make an account.
Yeah, I'm over there as well.
Nobody steal Jonathan Simon yet.
And you shouldn't have said that. Literally, you'll need to make it now. But over there, there's interaction straight away. It's what Twitter was about 7-8 years ago. And I think it's gaining momentum in a way that Threads couldn't. So I'm enjoying it already, being there. So go and follow me over at Blue Sky, and we'll put links in the show notes below. Still over at Twitter, though, if you want to be over there. But the Verstappen fan base is so good at being in every single comment section replies. So I'll do a tweet, and then it'll be just to my followers. And then all at once, I'll get a rush of Verstappen supporting and Dutch accounts all coming in at the same time to insult me in various ways. But they go together like a coordinated swarm. And I think that is why when there's any criticism of Verstappen, the outlet that has that suddenly gets bombarded with this, hey, you can't do this. And they feel the pressure. And I think in that way, Verstappen fans have genuinely moved the needle.
You didn't get the same when you were criticizing Rio Haryanto back in the day?
Oh, the Haryanto fans.
The Haryanto herd.
They do. So I think, some fan bases move in herds, but I think the Verstappen ones, they do it better than anybody else. So, I mean, if you look at the TV coverage, and we've never really done a critique of broadcasters, and I wasn't trying to, but by by letting go of a world champions broadcaster after 13 years, very shortly after being very vocal, and not just on the broadcast, but like on his tweets as well.
Yeah,
being very vocal.
The timing was weird.
Yeah, it feels undeniable, but you're going to become a news story if you do that. If you wait until the end of the season and do it mid-season like they did with Herbert, maybe it's a bit less like news. But the way they go about things when there's an incident, they don't look at that and go, nailed on. Verstappen's fault there. Oh my days, 20-second penalty. They always try to lay out the information so that then people can come to their own ultimate conclusion, which is a completely legitimate broadcast tactic. But sometimes it falls a little flat when one car does just mug another car and they go, well, if you look at the rules and this and that, and they try and make it all like both sides it. Yeah. But yeah, that's just the nature of broadcast. But that's why, you can have broadcast media, mainstream media for the event, and then you go and find, your own echo chamber, or you find your own water cooler where you can discuss it, with other fans like us, for example. And if you don't like what we serve up, we don't have to sack anyone. You just find something that suits you better. I think that's the beauty of this world. And I'll always recommend other F1 podcasts to people who email me saying, oh, you shouldn't be like this, that, or the other. And I go, well, I think you'd enjoy such and such a pod because it sounds like, that's the sort of thing you'd prefer. So I do, Jonno, because I just want people to be happy. Don't want them to be here because they think there's no other podcasts.
I don't believe you do that. Surely not. Surely you don't direct it.
I absolutely do.
You're very comfortable in your own shell.
I would want everybody who's listening to me to be listening to us because they've tried everything and think we're the one that suits them, not because we're pretending that none others exist. I'm not going to name them, not on the show.
No, go ahead. No. I don't know how much time we have left. We have the Lewis living in Fiorano topic.
Go for it.
Are we still doing season launch later as well?
Oh, no. Okay. Well, we can choose because they're both let's do the season launch now because all right. You go on, you summarize.
Basically, the season launch is it's simple as this. F1 next year have gone, we are getting rid of car launches, which, to be honest with you, Spanners, I know you got up at 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. every single year to watch a car launch.
Every year.
Yep. And if you're listening, that was 100% sarcasm. Anyway, what they're doing next year is a collective car launch in London. This is about 8 days before the first preseason test. Everybody's going to gather around. It's as simple as that. There's tickets for the public available on sale. Now, where I'm a bit jealous about this is like the third idea I pitched like 5-6 years ago that's been stolen by somebody in the F1 paddock. So I want some credit for this because I swear there was 3 readers of my article 5 years ago, and one of them had to have been the person who now works for F1 and implemented this idea.
You get all the candy, Johnny.
Because first off, who actually enjoys car launches anymore? They got so downgraded that this year, I don't even know if we had any. They were just YouTube launches for like a minute, maybe, or just screenshots. Like people just gave up on it. Because if you remember, even pre-COVID, I remember I sat through, I can't remember what year, but there was a Ferrari car launch where I watched, what's his name again? The Harry Potter guy from Ferrari, Mattia Binotto, where he just sat there on a podium with there was like 50 people in black suits. And I don't know what I was watching. It was just Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc, like so out of place. And they were just talking corporate BS for about an hour. I'm like, who actually watches this stuff? So I think this idea is terrific to do a season launch.
I'm trying to think last year, Alpine definitely did an in-person one with Bruno Famin, and it was the dullest thing I'd ever seen.
It's so dull. No, for real. Like,
yeah.
How they need to do it is, and I'm sure they're doing similar ideas to this, but here's my pitch. They have all the teams there at the same time. Now, it needs to be hosted with the right people. No dumb questions. For example, Spanners, I did some research of car launches over the last 10 years. Here are actual legit questions that were asked at car launches.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
One of them was, hey, Lewis, as a 5-time world champion, what keeps you coming back to Formula One? What kind of question is that? Why is that asked? Another one was, are you desperate into jumping into the car for the first time in preseason testing? Who asked these questions, this is why we need the right people to host. And then somebody said, so now Sergio Perez, you had one of the worst F1 seasons as a teammate of a world champion. Is your hunger still there in F1?
Oh my God. No, what? No, don't ask that.
No, I made that one up. No, I made the last one up.
Oh, you git. Right, that's the end of the show.
But what they do is, so I think, the O2 Arena is where it's being held in London. That's about, 20,000 crowd. That's pretty good. It's about the size of an NBA crowd. I think that can get pretty loud. You can get some cheers. There will apparently be entertainment. Are you digging that? Like music entertainment, 3 minutes, of a song.
Well, kind of, but I could just go and see a gig, couldn't I? I could just...
Yeah.
I don't understand what it is they're going for. I think it's sold out, so I think it's proved really popular. I can't imagine that really moves the needle for F1's profits. But if it's an event that people will buy tickets for, then so be it. And then you've got to do something then for the people who turn up. It's 2 hours only, so it's about the length of a movie, and so you've got to do something. You can't just have all the drivers just taking their turns to go up and answering those inane questions and being like, the whole team has a vision that I've bought into, the men and women back at the factory. All these things, we're on a 5-year plan. We're realistic but optimistic, and then Lance Stroll coming out and saying, "Hey, everybody, look at the size of my big head. I'm an important man. You must."
Well, if it's 2 hours long, even if that's 10 minutes per team, you now have 20 minutes spare. And it's like, if you have a 3-minute song, look, if you don't like music, you can use the 3 minutes for toilet breaks. It's a positive anyway for anybody involved, as long as like Jacques Villeneuve isn't playing his album. If anybody doesn't know that, Jacques Villeneuve actually has an album of music
go and check it out
in public. What I think they should do is give every team like a 15-minute slot, and it's like a dance cabaret. They have to make their own hype video. It's like a 30-second video to intro what's about to happen, get the whole crowd hyped. They then have a former driver or somebody who's like a historic member of the team come out on stage. Like imagine McLaren and Mika Hakkinen starts walking up and he starts announcing the McLaren car for the year. They should even have like old classic cars. Like if you're Ferrari, have the drivers drive out a 1950s car around like in a parade lap. Do that kind of stuff. They should take this spectacle to the next level.
Yep, because otherwise the risk is that it's going to just seem like a business conference. And I think because they get used to doing all those kind of businessy stuff and meetings. And I think there's a danger that it slips into that. It's suit and tie, and it's people making sure they can't say anything controversial. They can't say anything off script. No. So I wondered, was there going to be side panels? So if it was more a conference vibe, would there be side panels? But apparently, no, it's just this 2 hour thing on stage that you're watching and then you go home. So, okay, it's sold out. I'm skeptical that it would be worthwhile. I will still go if invited. So remember, my principles are for sale. So if you want me to be more friendly about your team, invite me as your guest to this launch and it'll be fine. Yeah, I think there's a real big danger of this just being a real disappointment.
Where it can be a real positive is, I'm pretty sure now, I'm not 100% sure on this, but doesn't the new Tottenham football stadium have like a go-kart track underneath it? Yeah. Like hold the car launch there. You've got a crowd of 60,000 now, 70,000. Who says no? All 20 drivers in a go-kart racing against each other at season launch. Do a heat event. Do 5-5-5. Do like Q1, Q2, Q3. Then you have a 1v1 off for a hot lap win, something like that. Who says no? Nobody's saying no.
You will never, ever see the current F1 grid in equal machinery in any kind of event. It will never happen because you can't break the magic. Everyone knows it's the cars that make the biggest difference, but you can't break the illusion. You cannot do it. And the shocker would be if you have some teammates who are held back in their F1 cars deliberately by a team, or have the less of a spec, that then go and rinse their senior teammate. It'll just never happen.
The other problem too is if what is forcing a team to then present their actual car that they're going to use 8 days later at preseason testing, because the date that this first season launch next year in 2025 is, as I mentioned, about a week before the first preseason test. Now, we've had years in the past where teams haven't even had their cars ready for preseason testing. I think Williams in one year, it might have been 2019, maybe pre-COVID. They didn't even make it, almost didn't make it a testing. So what happens if a team shows up to the car launch and it's their old car and their old livery, and all the technical gurus go, wait a second, they didn't launch their car. Either they're hiding a magnificent world championship car, or they're not going to be ready in time for round one.
Okay, so this is what it says on the website, and this is from Unwelcome Guest on Twitter, has pointed this out to me. The question is, what about the new 2025 cars themselves? Will we see them? And it says, no, you'll need to wait a little bit longer to see those, as teams will be pushing to get them ready for packing up and shipping them to Bahrain for pre-season testing. Instead, you'll see the 2025 liveries on show cars. Now, I actually think that's fine.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. I'm never expecting to see like a new car at a launch with technical innovation. It is about what pretty color is it going to be? What sponsors have we got on there? And that's what car launch always is. Introducing new drivers, sit on a tire and have your picture taken or whatever. When they have done what is meant to be the real car, but obviously they're not showing everything, but it's meant to be the real car, you then get people online scrabbling around, drawing diagrams on screenshots and going, oh, look at this scoop here, and look at the way that you don't know. You don't know. The tech journos barely know, but you definitely don't know. Shut up.
Oh, God. Yeah, look, I from my one class of engineering I can attest to that. Yes, that's correct. Nobody knows.
So I don't mind. So basically, I don't mind show cars. I think that's completely fine. Have the show cars there. My fear was that there wasn't going to be nothing to show at all. But obviously, if you're doing a car launch...
No, liveries.
If you're doing a car launch, you have to have a car. That's just common sense. But hopefully this means none of them are doing renders only. At least go to the effort of sticking it on a shell dummy car and putting it out.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think there must be a rule that there has to be like a physical car. And if it's not your 2025 car, it needs to be at least 2024 spec. Like there needs to be some form of rule on that. And imagine if they have like the full scales and like measurement blocks and everything they do post-race to make sure. Imagine if they go to that length for the regulations. I think it's a great idea. I am actually entirely jealous that my articles, I think I pulled it off the internet, which makes it even more annoying. Surely it's on Web Archive somewhere, because I want credit for this, Spanners. I really do want credit for this idea.
I'm happy to dish it out. I don't know how much that means. So yeah, I definitely don't want to, just be someone poo-pooing on every idea. On the face of it, hey, big glitzy launch event sounds okay. I just really, really hope they're actually catering to the people who've paid money to go there, because 2 hours, it seems a little bit, in and done. And I don't think it's enough of a draw to go, well, now we've got Adele on to do 1 3-minute song, and then here's the next render of the thing. But like you said, if it was something like historic cars going out and making it...
Doing burnouts. Yeah.
I just don't have any faith that they're going to do stuff to make it worthwhile, probably because they've just got no track record of doing this. If this is amazing, then I'll be the first in the queue for next season.
Alrighty. At Wembley. Right. The next one's going to surely be at a football stadium.
Maybe. Okay, so what's the last... What are we going to... Oh, well, there's a couple of things to end on. I know you said about Hamilton. Well,
this is an interesting one.
Go on, you do Hamilton and I'll do my one after that.
Now, the Lewis Hamilton one is quickly... There's a house that Enzo Ferrari owns, or used to own, back when he was alive, in Fiorano, which is Fiorano. If nobody knows what that is, it's a test track that Ferrari use. Wait, is it Fiorano? No, Fiorano. Yes, I thought I got mixed up with Mugello for a sec. Anyway,
Maranello was what I was trying to say.
Maranello, sorry, my bad. I there's so many Italian words here that I'm getting mixed up. But,
aren't you part Italian?
No, I'm not. My family's Middle Eastern, and that's why I'd like to tell Mohammed bin Sulayem that Missed Apex does completely support the FIA, and he is a great president despite all the firings we talked about earlier in this podcast. Anyway, the house is located in the middle of the racetrack, basically in Fiorano.
No,
it's a private house.
Is it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it's the infield.
It's in the infield of Maranello. Sick.
Yes. Wait, Maranello or Fiorano? I'm pretty sure it's Fiorano.
Sorry.
Yeah, whichever one it is. Now, it's a house that Michael Schumacher had the privilege of staying at when he was testing at Ferrari. Now, Schumacher was renowned for being like a super hard worker, right? I mean, that's why he was so good, is he would be testing Ferraris. This is when testing wasn't as limited to. They used to spend, $1 trillion a minute, that team, to try and become good. So he used to stay there a lot. Now, the rumor came out that Lewis Hamilton was also going to be given the privilege of staying there in his time at Ferrari. But then there's also been another source that has claimed this is completely wrong, because the source that claimed he was going to be staying in this house was Italian media.
And what did we say? Well, sorry, I'm sorry, Italy, but this is such a true meme.
Which, look, the house in Fiorano, it looks very nice. There's photos of it indoors. It's very, very, it's exquisite. I'm assuming everything's like Ferrari branded in there, like Ferrari towels and Ferrari aftershave, Ferrari flip-flops, Ferrari, what else have you got there? Ferrari underwear. You can just take it to the next level with Ferrari branded stuff, which is a bit of a shame, because I'm sure Lewis Hamilton was really looking forward to dressing up like.
So it's not true. So it's not true.
I don't think it's true.
Oh, okay. But the thing is, this is all trying to say how important Lewis Hamilton is. Oh my goodness, like he's getting Schumacher's house. He's getting this famous house. So I think we were right to be mixed up there. So the Fiorano circuit is a private racetrack owned by Ferrari for development and testing purposes. And I think that's where we see the video footage of the Ferraris on track. It is located near the Italian town of Maranello. So it's just a lump of all those things in together. So I think this was trying to show, like, he's so important. He's going to go and do things and upset the apple cart and win his title. Whereas other people are going, he's just there to kind of retire and do a bit of a victory lap at the end and be more of an ambassador, almost supporting Leclerc.
No way. I always thought as well we won't go into it too long because we're going to wrap up, but I do genuinely think Lewis thinks Ferrari are going to have the best car. Every single team change he's made, which is 2 now. The first one at Mercedes was because he was convinced that they were going to have a massive budget, massive commitment.
And they did.
And they did. And I think Ferrari, it's also been kind of similar. No matter what rumors you hear have come out of his change, I do genuinely think that they are going to be the World Championship team for the next maybe 2 years.
Thank you, Eyal, there. Yeah, the track is Fiorano. The factory is located in the village nearby called Maranello. So There you go.
Not to get mixed up with Mugello.
No, but
completely different.
Yeah. But I would have said, if you just said to me, "What's the test track?" I'd have gone, "Oh, that's at Maranello." So I would have.
We were both correct. Yes.
Well, or equally wrong, I suppose. The last thing I've got for you is this Kit Kat sponsorship of F1, which seems to indicate that Perez is going to be staying on at Red Bull indefinitely. So it's a really convoluted line, because you think Kit Kat is Swiss, I think. It's owned by Nestle, which is Swiss. So you go, oh, well, that's independent money. But then it turns out that is managed through a finance firm that is actually Mexican. And that's why all the Kit Kat promos of Kit Kat going to F1 was all Perez with Kit Kats. So I don't know. It feels to me, despite all these rumors, despite all the performance issues, that Perez is just here to stay.
Not because he's gone into a chocolate form of depression after this season.
I'm not sure he minds. It's so strange. I mean, he's going there. He's obviously getting personal finance. He's got Carlos Slim money going in there. He's an F1 driver. His life isn't terrible. There's a lot of criticism out there that he can just ignore. Like, why does he care? He's probably fine. Like, oh, my results aren't incredible this year. So does that affect his life? Just goes to work and comes home. Is everybody listening the best at their job? Or have you got people at your work who are a bit better than you, but it's fine because you all get paid?
I don't even know where to start. Is this seriously like our final topic? Kit Kat and Formula One? It's the official chocolate bar of Formula One, by the way, Spanish, just to clarify. It is you cannot eat any other chocolate if you're an F1 fan. Otherwise, it's haram.
I think to me, F1. The story isn't the fact that it's Kit Kat joining F1. The story for me is that there's funding for Perez. Money. So as much as everyone just thinks it's a no-brainer that he's going to go, there seems to be massive support from Mexico, from Carlos Slim still, and from other Mexican businesses. And he's got apparently a bunch of new sponsors coming in for next year. So everything is pointing to him staying for 2025, which frankly comes as a bit of a shock, I think, to most Formula One fans. But I don't think Mexican fans, like, they might be disappointed, but I don't think Mexican fans want Perez out. They don't want the torture to end. They want him to stay at Red Bull and keep going.
But who says that all this money coming in means he's going to stay at Red Bull? What if this money is coming in because Red Bull aren't the ones who need it, but they're preparing a financial pitch to some of the teams down the order, aka possibly Audi in the future.
Yeah. Well, if this is a pitch for 2025 and there's sponsors coming in, I don't think there's any spots left that have not been confirmed. I don't think, has Bortoleto been confirmed?
Yeah. Yeah, that's confirmed, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is my suspicion now.
I'm going to double check this now.
They've rallied. There's money, and it's surprising that Red Bull have kind of gotten into this position where they want money. But apparently, if they weren't to keep Perez, if it was Lawson or Colapinto or Tsunoda, they would also have to bring money. And I think it's just a case at the moment that they want money for their second driver, and Perez can bring the most, and that's why he's there.
Now, the thing is actually on Bortoleto is that I'm pretty sure that he's also confirmed for 2026, because I'm just looking at the 2026 grid, and there's a seat free at Alpine next to Pierre Gasly. So there's a possibility for Sergio Perez. Mercedes, that's already a write-off because that's going to be Verstappen and George Russell. And Antonelli's going to go back to karting. No, just joking. But we'll see how that plays out. And then you've also got the sister team, which I don't know. Like, if you're Sergio Perez, I get they did it to Daniel Ricciardo and all that, but I don't think Sergio Perez is the type to then go to the sister team. I don't know how this actually plays out.
No, I don't know. I think that's definitely a no-go. So I think it's Red Bull or nothing at this point for 2025, and I get the feeling he's gonna be there. Really interesting one for Alpine, because I assume you're saying that because Doohan technically has a 1-year contract, or we're assuming it's a 1-year contract. Apparently it's not even a 1-year contract. It was like a 5-race contract, and he's got 5 races to prove himself to then complete the year. So I don't know what their backup plan is or who's coming in. I think Schumacher is probably still a backup driver there. But this is why they could so easily have dumped him for Colapinto if that's the way it goes. So it looks like Doohan's on a little bit of shaky ground there. It's not the best F1 contract to be going in on.
Which makes sense, because Colapinto, I'm pretty sure rumors swirling around that he's also going to be back next year on the grid, which makes no sense because there's only 1 seat left and it's probably going to go to Liam Lawson. So that says to me that Colapinto could be on this kind of like a HRT 2010 kind of deal where they just like said any driver who can just pay and keep this team alive can drive. So you had like Chantok in there, Sakon Yamamoto drove a few races. Like, it was just that kind of stuff. So maybe that could be the situation at Alpine. It might not just be Jack Doohan proving himself.
All right. We do have a final last one, because you seem concerned, Jonno, that if the last story isn't amazing, everybody's going to be upset, right? So before we go, though, go and follow Jonno. I'm sure people can follow you on your new Blue Sky account and on Twitter.
I'll make that.
Johnny S8. Johnny S8
so,
on Twitter?
Yes, on Twitter, it's at Johnny S8, JONNYESS8. I'm on Instagram as well. I will try and register for Blue Sky at the end of this, because somebody already steals my full name on every single social platform. I even have a new website, and it's Jonathan Simon, JONATHANSIMON, like Simon, basically. It depends what language you want to speak. And I couldn't even get .com because somebody's taken that. So it's .com.au. And you can just check out my stuff. Obviously, work on TV, do some news, presenting commentary, all this kind of different stuff. Give me a follow. It'll help out a bunch.
All right. After you follow me, my links are always at the top. In the show notes, you'll notice my links are at the top because I'm the best one. So you follow me first. And then if you've got any emotional energy left.
Just remember to unblock Spanners Ready before you click follow is the main thing there.
So the final one is Dan Fallow's leaving from Aston Martin, or being basically looks like he's taken the brunt of the lack of success of Alpine. So what do you make of that one? I have strong views. Yeah.
All right, where do we start? Maybe a quick 10-second background on Dan Fallows. This is a guy who joined Red Bull in about 2006, around the time Red Bull started as a team, known for a reputation of being an aerodynamic kind of specialist, very similar to Adrian Newey in a sense, and was part of all the teams that won world championships. So the Sebastian Vettel era from 2010 to 2013, those 4 world titles helped the team sort of transition from Mercedes, well, not the team, sorry, helped F1 transition from Mercedes dominance to Red Bull dominance, really helped develop the car in recent years. Then in 2021 or 2022, in recent years, was poached by Mr. Lawrence Stroll himself to go to Aston Martin. This is a man who gained a reputation as being a premier figure at Red Bull, who was renowned for helping develop that car, one of the many big heads who helped that car become a world championship car for many different times and eras, was poached by Aston Martin. He then got sued by his own team, Red Bull. It became a whole debacle. Aston Martin poached a guy who they put so much effort into stealing. Now he's out
2 years
after
later.
2 years.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts and what's your conspiracies?
Well, I was chatting to Matt, and so Matt's sort of more on the side of, well, it's not his fault. Matt's not here, by the way, because I want him to be rested up for the schedule that's coming up ahead. And it's 3 a.m. for him at the moment. So his was that it's really not his fault because the wind tunnel they're having the same issues with it as Mercedes are having, and thinks that, he's being hampered by that. And also that Aston Martin got hobbled by the FIA in the middle of last season, and that really set them back as well. So my counters to that are, well, they had that success at the beginning of, was it the beginning of last season? It was, wasn't it? Where they were, right up there, and everyone was saying, right, they're going to be the second best team forever. So the wind tunnel obviously didn't hamper them over the winter. They were able to come out of the box with a great car. But then they also, if you get hobbled by the FIA, you probably sailed too close to the wind on the rules or went over them. So that's kind of on you as well. But then you've got no plan B. So because their flexible front wings got taken away, there's no plan B. And in 2 years, every single upgrade has gone relatively backwards down the grid. So that's obviously an abject failure. And the team seem to be blaming Dan Fallows by implication. So the team think that he's responsible. Now I wonder if you get hired and poached by as a Red Bull engineer, you have all the information that Red Bull has at that moment, and you can take that into building a car in the same regulation set and do something pretty cool. But then your knowledge is immediately out of date. Now everything that happens at Red Bull from development onward, you don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
So increasingly you're on your own. And he's had, or the team at Aston Martin have had, how many update cycles? They've had a good dozen cracks at trying to get the team going in the right direction. So it's perfectly possible, and this is pure speculation and guesswork, that someone's moved over with enough knowledge to give a real boost to a midfield team, but then hasn't been able to sustain that. And if you look at what the Aston Martin plan is, they've gone, that didn't work. Now let's get who we actually think was the mastermind behind all that Red Bull success.
Which kind of makes sense, because I think this is with most engineers and people in F1. I could be wrong. I could cop a lot of flack for this, but I don't think maybe Dan Fallows wasn't as good as people made him out to be. Maybe also he was good, but he was also on a team where there were many other good people.
Yeah, part of a
so
team.
It wasn't an individual thing. Same with Adrian Newey. Adrian Newey is not going to, for example, Sauber this year, Kick Sauber, whatever they're called, and turning them into a points finisher in a year or two. Sometimes you are budget limited. The unfortunate thing is that Aston Martin can't do is they can't just design this year's Red Bull for next year because the grid's so close. That won't work like it used to remember in 2020 when the Racing Point did it, the same sort of team in a sense. But that was because Mercedes were 1 second ahead. So their car the previous year was already going to be, pretty good the next year anyway.
The pink Mercedes, basically.
Yes, the pink Tracing Point is what the nickname was for that one. So the one with Fallows it's an interesting one too, because it was supposed to be a reunion between him and Adrian Newey, because they had built that relationship at Red Bull. Now we don't get that reunion. What does Adrian Newey think about this? Is he positive about this change?
Well, you'd imagine. Well, the rumors we heard about why Ferrari didn't end up making a bigger play for him was that Adrian Newey wanted some control over the staff. So wanted hiring and firing powers, which that's too much power in the context of Ferrari, but perhaps Aston Martin were happy enough to let him have that, which puts a very different context on the Dan Fallows leaving, doesn't it? Yeah.
Fallows ate his sandwich on his second last day at Red Bull.
That's it.
He holds a grudge as Adrian Newey.
Yeah. So, obviously, definitely speculating, but we had Mark Preston on here, who was the team boss at Techeetah in Formula E, very successful there, and is now returning to Formula E with Lola. And when he was talking about working with Adrian Newey, you're talking about Adrian Newey as managing departments. And I think there's this big thing of, is he going to be there sketching stuff? I think the skill of project manager and managing the departments and finding the right individual, setting them off in the right direction. Now, that individual they send off in the right direction might be incredibly good at then enacting that plan and designing that thing. Does that mean you're going to be an overall project manager who has to now not only deal with the aero, but the suspension elements and put it all together in a package? They could just be two completely different skill sets. So it could be the Peter principle. Do you know the Peter principle, Jonno?
No.
Okay. So basically, it's that everybody who's good at their job gets promoted, and if you're good at that job, you get promoted, and then eventually you get to a job that you're not that good at, so you're not good enough to get promoted, but you stay in that position. So basically, in a large corporation, everybody is at a level at which they aren't that good anymore. So you filled every position suboptimally. So yeah, it could just be a case of someone who's really good at that specific job gets promoted to this big opportunity at Aston Martin, and then just doesn't have the very specific skills to be good at that kind of Newey role. And I don't think that would be shameful on anyone. That happens in business all the time.
No, it does. And you're right. It's like, just because you're a great player at football doesn't mean you're going to be a good manager. It's the exact same way. I'm not saying Adrian, I don't know about Adrian. I've never worked for the guy, but I'm saying it is different to drawing cars on a sketchboard.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So the genius could possibly be the project management side. All right, guys. So what do we have coming up on Missed Apex? We've got Joe Sayward joining us from Las Vegas at 3 p.m. on Tuesday. So I'll live stream that internet, as long as all the internet things are holding out, because he'll be in a hotel. And then we will be Sunday morning UK time around at 10 or 11. So I think the race is 6 a.m. in the UK. So it'll finish at 7:30, 8 o'clock. And then I think we'll just get going and we'll do our race review around 10 in the morning. But until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast. It's too early. I've only had 3 coffees.